this is Sarah Cox with A Day to Be Me. Today we are going to be discussing personas. Now,
Is Alexander Hodge.
And
So,
Kevin.
and Kevin.
Mhm.
So how our persona in the word person and persona itself translates to from Greek meaning a mask. So the persona is like the self plus, so to speak. So when we say when we're in an environment, say, and this is actually why I kind of dressed up today, because I wanted to demonstrate a this is what I wear when I want to put on a persona. If I'm going to a soiree, a company celebration, having been to one, everybody is being themselves plus. So they have a persona about themselves that's businesslike and professional, but they're also integrating that with themselves. So I find it very fascinating how some people can create their own character in life. I see this every now and then, especially with younger women, where especially with women, seems like it's more prevalent, where they'll create a character for themselves through their either be their art or what they're into. Like I have a coworker on our team that she's very spiritual and has kind of that wolf spirit. She's very artistic. She draws a lot of very emotionally captivating drawings of wolves that are like humanoid but like human expressions. And the way she literally created her own character, she looks like one of the characters from her artwork. So I find that fascinating. So it's like it's her person, but it's her plus. So it's her plus to the persona. Um, so also, Callie, you've done this to a degree as well. One of the what was that analogy you made of the skeleton being the self, and then taking upon like little pieces of clay to add onto that skeleton to make the persona from people that you and things that you idolize, right?
okay, so the way I explained it earlier when we were on the phone, what I do is, so I hit rock bottom a few years ago, and I was left with my skeleton, myself, my who I was before everything led me to that rock bottom. I had nothing. I was just surviving because of, well, what I did was with that skeleton that I had, that rock bottom, that newness, I took things from other people's personalities that I liked. So, like for for example, like his wanting to grow, wanting to um, uh, be self-independent, be and improve himself, stuff like that that I really like out of people. I take it, and it's like a visual would be like taking that little bit, like a piece of clay, and putting it on the skeleton, and keep collecting from the different things that I like from each person, and being able to mold it into my own being, into my own self-created personality. And that takes time, but eventually you're going to have this full person, this full model of a person with all of these different pieces of clay, these different personalities that you chose from.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways you can recreate yourself and become someone that you don't despise, but someone that you really look up to. You can look up to yourself.
Yep. Yeah, and Callie, so you brought up the point where you hit rock bottom.
Mhm.
You're the self, sorry, the ego. So what happens with that? The ego collapses, and then you have the self, which is this, like you said, the skeleton. So that's what's called an ego death. I've experienced that as well. My senior year of high school is when I experienced it, and like I had psychosis, like I was hospitalized for a month of Christmas into the New Year. Um, and from that, it a lot of what I remember has burnt off. Like I don't remember exactly how some of the hobbies that I was into before that, I don't remember them. So again, what happened was I had the skeleton where I had to build onto that again. And there's some hope in that actually, because what that means is that people are resilient. People can actually do this where we have the self framework to fall onto if something really terrible happens. So when something happens like that, David Goggins, I wanted to reference to him. He had a lot of these happen to him where he said he started had to start from scratch again, or scratch became his friend. So that skeleton it can become your friend because that's something that you can fall onto. Because when I went through the rock bottom when I was through Epworth, um, I had to really, I guess, detach my ego. I had to like forget about it, because for a few days because um it wasn't working. It was a version of me that it was a version of me that wasn't working anymore. So I kind of had to just let it go. I had to let it go. I had to let that guy go. Um, and in doing that, I've taken pieces from what I've learned from working with people at Menards, from my job experiences, and learning and taking pieces from them. And one of the funny things I've heard this say that it's okay. You can steal this from people, It's sanctioned intellectual property theft. So you can see someone that you idolize and do something that they're doing that's making them successful. If I'm doing something stupid that I could stop doing, and yet I see someone else that I actually idolize is like, and I could do something that they're doing. One of the workouts that I do is that cinder block exercise. That actually came from a piece that I kind of stole, put onto my skeleton from Pat McNamara. And
I,
yeah,
because we are also doing audio, can you explain what the cinder block exercise is?
right.
Yeah.
So I do this thing with a cinder block, and the reason that I do it for one is because I don't believe in shelling out a bunch of money to workout equipment, keeping it natural, keeping it to the environment with as minimum expense as possible. Just pick up something that's laying around, and so what I do is I swing a kettlebell between the legs, up again, between the legs, up again, and it really works on my hands. Yeah, it does sometimes will cut a little bit, but it houses them up. And the reason that is because what if I'm working on something where I have to handle something that's difficult to handle with my hands and it won't hurt. Like I can actually rip something open with my bare hands without it actually. I know I can work with my hands with confidence, having them toughened up. But also it targets your back, your transverse plane of motion. So working that transverse plane is what I think a lot of people neglect. And that's what, again, this is a piece that I took from Pat McNamara. This is the guy that I really idolize. He's a retired military veteran and just a badass. And in fact, he does a podcast and a thing called University to Badassery. Go check him out. I recommend it. Basic dude stuff. Actually, that's trademarked from him. So, um, but yeah, having taken that from people who are higher on the growth scale than I am, now I'm actually in a way moving my way up and growing growing in a way that's positive, spiraling myself upwards. And I get people asking me about it at work. Like they saw my cinder block workout on YouTube or something on Facebook or something, and they asked me about it. And it's like, oh yeah, you saw that? Some of them weren't even friends of mine on Facebook, which is very interesting. It's like, oh, how do you know? I didn't even tell them yet. funny how the internet's fast. So
Information fast.
but yeah, but that persona that I put on, I post my workouts again. That's kind of like the self plus the persona. Also, when I'm at work, when I'm at working, when I put the uniform on, when I put the blue shirt on, that helps. It actually helps. So when you're dressed, you feel it. Like you feel like you're in that environment. Like right now, because I'm wearing this, even though I'm sitting here at home on a podcast, I actually feel like I'm at a company soiree. There's something about that that brings out that persona within me. So the things that we do, the habits and the behaviors that we do consciously, somehow bring out some subconscious elements of our being to our persona. So it's like it brings out the top shelf guy, company soiree celebration kind of thing when I wear this thing. And then when I wear the uniform at Menards, I'm here to help. I'm here to solve your problem. I'm here to what are you working on? What kind of house project are you working on? I'm going to match you with equipment and tools and stuff to help you get your project done. How can I help? And then when I'm here at home, another thing I think that's equally important is the ability to be able to strip off the persona and relax. Be able to actually strip off the persona and actually be ourselves when we're back home and there's a right time for it. And it's very important to be able to do that because then that kind of gives our consciousness a break. And so we're actually able to be ourselves, actually have a day to be me, and be able to strip off the persona, take off the mask. Because when I'm home, people knows I'm open about it. But when I'm home in the mornings, I'm on my couch. Like I'm waking up in the morning on my couch with a cup of coffee, watching the news. Like I'm just a basic dude waking up in the morning at home. But when I'm actually ready and dressed for a work environment, that's when the persona is put on, and I'm boogieing out the door going to work right away. So that's a persona that I brings out. But when I'm home on a day off, an actual day off where I pick time for myself, yeah, the persona comes off, and I'm in my PJs on my couch, you know. So the ability to take time for ourselves to strip off the persona is also equally important and healthy. To take a break and eat a steak.
Okay, so Kev, you had some things you wanted to mention
Yeah,
about persona.
the Persona video games that nobody hasn't heard of. They also teach about social links and different personas have different abilities. It's a fun RPG, but the songs really hit you. Like, reach out for the truth means reach out for your true self.
Mm.
Yeah. Each song, like Burn My Dread, if you're dreading something, that song's telling you about a person's persona of too much dread.
Absolutely.
I'm going to look into this game.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Persona. I'm currently playing Persona 5 Royal, where you wear a mask called the Phantom Thieves. So that part where you say about ripping off your mask, that's what
Yeah.
he does in Persona 5 and releases his true self.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense, Alex.
Okay. So is it like a masquerade ball kind of thing? That reminds me. Who's seen The Labyrinth?
I have.
Yes.
Great movie.
Yes. So, um, I think that movie touches on where she figures out her persona and burns off other parts of her that were childish
Yeah.
to So that I think that movie touches on that too. That scene where she's at the masquerade ball, that's that's the ideal persona that she was looking at for herself. So
Mhm.
that's her that's herself plus. The movie Labyrinth, I think, really touches on that on a sub level. Like,
Yeah.
I
The
mean, I think
Persona
touches on
games are a dungeon crawler.
yeah,
Basically, you go up layers and layers of towers and rescue your friends to
okay,
reveal their true selves, and they gain abilities and their own personas. And the higher each social link for each, the better their abilities.
yep, and that's reflective on kind of how the social hierarchy works because the more we expose ourselves to experience and to events, we actually subconsciously even we observe how people are interacting with each other, and then we
Hmm.
um once we practice it, we're probably going to make some mistakes and fall flat, you know. But then we're actually the more exposure, you're right. So then you kind of link up your ranks and
Yeah,
yeah. So that yeah,
yeah, it's very interesting. I learned a lot from it.
yeah. It probably helps you with life persona and pursuits as well. It
Yeah,
sounded like it educated you on
yeah.
how to do
And
that. Yeah.
you have to study for each day of class. You got to remember each word of text and make sure you have it in your mind to
Yeah.
increase your self ability. So if you sleep during class, then you downgrade an ability and up one. But it's better to keep studying and learning.
I'm looking this up right now.
Shin Kama Shin Mangama Tensei Persona.
Okay. Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can get the audience to see this. That's all right, Callie.
Absolutely. Just share.
Yeah.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
Yes. That's Persona 5.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
it's a great yeah, that's the
Is
one
there
with the
a
map.
description under it?
Yep, the Phantom Thieves.
Okay. There's something about video games I think that sometimes gets glossed over, especially for the sort of generation that has been kind of brainwashed into thinking that video games are just for video gamers. Like, no, I think video gamers actually have an educational and a storytelling element to them that a lot of people can learn from.
That's why I like RPGs,
Yeah, yeah. So there are
like
some
Final
games
Fantasy.
that can teach you that stuff because a lot of those games, believe it or not, have a storyline. Somebody's written them down, the storyline for these games, and they got that experience from something based on real life
Yes, that's how it
that can
works.
teach people who play the game. To me, it's almost like whenever I play a video game, to me, it's almost like reading a book in a way
That's
because
what it
I like
is
to get
to
in.
me.
It's a way of reading a book because we're getting into the the experiences of the characters and we can learn a lot on how it reflects on real life as well. Even though it's a video game, a lot of that mirrors the storytelling mirrors what happens in life and the lessons that we can learn from that
Yeah.
are it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
So Callie, yeah, so the persona is like the self plus, and if some people have a persona where it doesn't work. You know, they have a persona that needs to be burnt off. So that's, I think, what happens when people kind of hit that moment where the persona that they've got right now is awkward and it's not working. I've been there. Like I've been, you know, where I would go out to social events. Like when I first started at Menards, you know how many times my social ladder fell flat on its face because I didn't have the exposure and the experience to socialize with the neurotypical as much. But um, because most of what I've learned was from hanging out with people from Logan Center, because a lot of them were not a lot of them were had disabilities as well, but actually were worse than mine. We've become the average of the 5 people that we hang out with. It's true. There's no escaping it. We've become the average, whether we like it or not, of the 5 people that we hang out with. So that's why sometimes I'm learning how to do this, where to hang out with people who are better than, quote unquote, better than me on the growth scale. I'm trying to learn how to get together with group or somewhere where people are ahead of me on the growth scale. And this is what my mom and dad are kind of wanting me to do for a while, since I started going to Logan Center at the time. This is at the time I was going to Logan Center. They wanted me to go up the growth scale rather than hang out all the time with people from Logan Center. Go out to other events to hang out with people who are above me on the growth scale. Go from there. But I seem to find that when I'm alone, when I listen to videos like Alan Watts and videos that educate me on the persona and self-improvement and self-help, I can kind of do this without going out and practicing it, but yet it's almost like at the same time I have to actually go out and experience and practice it myself as well. But it's almost like one of the ways I've heard it when we look up these videos on how to do it in these self-help podcasts and stuff on how to do it. That's like we're sharpening our sword. But we actually got to also go out and practice with it. So going out and practicing how our persona works in the world also works too. Don't be afraid to do that. I mean, don't be afraid. One of the ways that I experiment with this is that when I shop at Menards, one of the things that I did, which is funny, I would dress in a type of attire that looked rough. I would have like a rough look to me. So I would wear, and this is something that I could dress up in the winter. I would wear my bio father's coat. It's like a green thick coat, kind of baggy, and old khaki pants. And I wear this hat that's got the brim that kind of comes down. It's almost like a sailor, like a fisherman's hat. And I would wear that and I did that as like a persona experiment. I wanted to create a character that looked rough, like people. And it's so funny because when I shopped at Menards, eventually it caught on. I got found out. They knew it was me, but for a while I started shopping in that gear. And when they didn't know it was me, it kind of kept their distance. It kind of kept it respectful, like this guy looks like he sees some stuff kind of thing. And I did that as an experiment. And then there's another time where I came into Menards or a shop there where I was dressed up almost like I had like a bright red long sleeve. I looked like one of those gangster sporty kind of gangster kind of look. I had like a necklace on, bright red, and I had like bright red I had like Adidas pants on and like Jordans on, and I came in looking like that with a red cap and sunglasses on. Came in looking with that persona on and headphones, the whole shebang. I came in with that persona. So it was an interesting experiment how to present myself with a persona that's outside of what I normally do.
I'm actually really curious. What was the reaction from the public when you dressed in the red and the what you just described?
Okay, it was similar because it was similar, I guess, to when I did the rough one, but it was almost like I couldn't tell because again I was there to show because I didn't first off a couple reasons I did this was for one a social experiment, for two I didn't want Menards to know it was me. They might put me to work. No, actually they wouldn't do that to me. They respect my position pretty well there. But but I noticed that yeah, it's I don't really notice people looking, but I could feel it. I could sense like, oh, this guy looks like he's in the zone. I could feel it. I could sense it off people that I just felt like this guy's in the zone with that persona. I think listen to my music, and I don't normally go out like that. Normally, when I go out, is more of the rougher character type, where I'll have like my Blackbird shirt on, kind of almost like a military, like a retired military persona. Like I like to just look like I have a respect for the military, which I do. That's another thing I figured out too, with the persona and presenting ourselves with a persona, by the way that we dress. I wore this shirt with an American flag on it. And this is shortly after, I guess, Trump and Biden were campaigning, shortly or during that. And I don't want to get political, but what I'm saying is, I realized that the reaction that I got from people when I wore that, and there was a reason that I wore attire like that was American and very patriotic, is because, well, I noticed that people become very patriotic. They become bonded when America starts to kind of, go down from other sources. So like there's a bond that happens. There's like a camaraderie that happens. So I dressed up kind of like one of those guys, and I would get compliments. And I had a guy. I was at my family and I were out, and I was wearing the shirt and the hat with the American flag on it, black hat with the American flag on it, black shirt with the American flag on it. And this guy, my mom, my dad, and me were sitting at a table. We just got done playing mini golf, and we're having dinner. And out of the nowhere, I didn't even know this guy. This guy came up and shook my hand right in front of my mom and dad and say, "Wear it proud, sir."
Wow.
Yeah. So that persona, it has an effect. So yeah, so the persona that we pick, a character that we can pick to be the self plus, it has an effect on how we climb that hierarchical ladder in our social skills. It was very interesting to figure that one out. But this guy shook my hand and he's like, "Wear it proud," and I didn't know how to respond to that because I wasn't used to that. But I was like, I will. I said, I will. And yeah, he right there. I didn't even know him. He didn't know me. And it was right in front of my mom and dad. He came up and shook my hand. So it was interesting how the character that we can build for ourselves can have that effect
Absolutely.
on social. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, is that the topics that we are going to speak about today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, this concludes our podcast about personas. Again,
Uh,
I'm Sarah Callie Cox.
Alexander Hodge.
I'm Kevin Gallinger, and also make sure to subscribe and hit that like button and hit notifications for our latest videos.
And go
See
check out
you
our
next
website.
time.
Yep.
Take care.
Take care.